They didn't look inside the Peugeot. There was that, at least. Trent had felt certain that Alain would duck his head in through the open driver's door, but he was in a hurry to get Stephanie home. And though Stephanie had glanced at a window on her way past, the interior of the Peugeot was in darkness, and she hadn't reacted in the slightest. Maybe she hadn't spotted anything. Maybe she had, but she wouldn't process the information until much later. She was in shock. She wouldn't be thinking clearly. Trent knew precisely what she was going through. He had experienced something similar only recently. So he'd been lucky, in a small way. And he'd suffered unimaginable misfortune in a much bigger, much more destructive way, too. Trent watched Alain remove his jacket to reveal the webbed shoulder holster he was wearing over his fitted white shirt. He wadded the jacket round his hand and used it to scoop the shattered windscreen glass from the driver's seat and the dashboard of the Mercedes. He told Stephanie to climb into the front alongside him, and he started the engine and edged forwards. There was a moment of resistance as the rear bumper freed itself from the embrace of the Peugeot, then a wrench of metal and broken plastic as the Mercedes dropped free and rejoined the road. Alain drove off at a cautious speed, the single working headlamp pawing at the darkness ahead, the left front wheel snagging against the distorted wing. One of the rear light clusters had been smashed, but a single bulb was still intact, and Trent watched its aimless twinkling until the Mercedes rounded a looping bend and disappeared from view. He was tempted to remain sitting on the boulder. He was tempted to quit altogether. His limbs felt leaden, and he had the nauseating sensation of having been duped. But the stakes were too high, his need too urgent, and how could he possibly live with himself if he gave up now? The situation had changed, was all. This wasn't the first time he'd had to adapt to new circumstances, and he doubted it would be the last. But he was a resourceful, capable guy. He was well-trained and experienced, and his motivation was strong. It was all-consuming. He forced himself to his feet, marched across to the Peugeot and flipped off the busted lights, snatched the keys from the ignition and fetched his mobile phone from the glove box. He unbuttoned his denim shirt, peeled it from his skin and laid it across the roof of the car, unfastened his holster and tossed it into the cab, then ducked in towards the rear bench and grabbed a rug to cover what he needed to cover. He slammed the door closed. Kicked it, too. The steel toe cap of his desert boot left a dint in the side of the car, a mark of his frustration. It wasn't enough. He pictured himself bending down, gripping hold of the chassis, and heaving with his back and his knees until he was able to stand upright and flip the car right over the edge in some kind of superhuman expression of his fury. He took a long breath, chest quivering as he inhaled. Then he grabbed his shirt and fed his arms through the sleeves and fastened the buttons. He locked the Peugeot and stood back to assess its position. It was pointed at a slant off to the side of the road, and there was a long, steady incline leading up to it. It would be safe enough here. And it wasn't as if the road was busy. Not a single vehicle had passed. Gone 11 o'clock at night, close to full dark. It was time to start hiking. To start thinking, too. 20 minutes walking and Trent came in sight of the perimeter fence that surrounded the Moreau estate. His pace was slower than usual, a consequence of the bruising to his knees and ribs, as well as the extra time he allowed himself to order his thoughts. He was sweating, and his breath was shallow and reedy. A fog of midges swirled around his head, drawn by the heat coming off his body. It didn't waft a hand, didn't slap his skin when they bit him. It felt like a torment he deserved. Self-pity. It was an indulgence he could no longer afford. He shook loose his arms and legs and rotated his head on his shoulders, like an athlete readying himself for an event he'd been training for his entire life. The fence was high and imposing. It was constructed from some kind of unfinished galvanized steel. The uprights were beveled and set close together, leaving just enough space to poke an arm through. Sharpened barbs ran along the top, and a series of signs had been secured to the uprights at regular intervals. Propriété sous vidéosurveillance. Property under video surveillance. The first camera